Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get to our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, please give a like and subscribe down below. We greatly appreciate it. We have Martina Yabekova on the show. She's a 2018 Olympian. She's also a three-time figure pro champion. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Martina, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Ryan.
Absolutely. So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what really inspired you to adapt that change and get into that really healthy and fit lifestyle?
Well, it's taken a little while, I have to say. I used to manage a catering company and I got quite fat. And I remember thinking that, I needed to get a little bit healthier. So a friend of mine and we started to run and we did a couple of push-ups, a couple of sit-ups. And we thought, and we lost a lot of weight that way. And it was pretty good at first. And then we thought maybe we need to build a little bit of muscle. Then we got into a gym and we realized that we did not know what to do. And so I decided to take the personal training course and educate myself so I can educate others.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I always sort of like to bring up the point where if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people in it, there's 100 different ways as to how they got into shape. I mean, whether it's their nutrition, their diet, I mean, their exercise, how many reps they do. There's so many little things that add up to the final package that you see. Was that hard for you? I mean, I know you said starting
Correct.
out you really didn't know what to do in the gym, but was that hard for you just finding out what specifically worked best for you? Because like I always say, if you were to go up and talk to someone and say like, that you look amazing, like what do you do for this body part or that body part, what works for them 99% of the time isn't going to work as well for you.
That's correct. Yes. And I mean, I think it's just a question of time, right? So I started with training and then picked up a little bit on the nutrition aspect. And I have to say, I'm still struggling with that. But I have over the years decided that, it was going to be a priority for me. And so I've taken it a little bit more seriously. And with the help of my coach, Eric Delora, and my partner is a bodybuilder as well, Mark Santorno, we've come up with something that works for me. But it's taken a solid 12 years.
Yeah, it's such a hard process because one of the things that I always love to stress is a lot of people think that it's just, especially with the younger generation, they think that they want it now and they want it yesterday. So when it comes to weight loss and losing weight, they just want it immediately and they don't realize how much of a time process it is to get everything right. I mean, it takes so much time, but it's always, if you just stick in there, it will eventually get to where you want it to go as long as you're putting in the right work and you have the right nutrition. But when you were also starting out, did you find, I mean, before that, did you have sort of, because a lot of bodybuilders that we have on, they sort of have the foundation to build a muscular body before, like whether it's genetically, did you find that it was really easy for you to sort of put on muscle and lose weight?
Well, actually, I wouldn't know because I really, like I said, I wasn't very
Yeah.
educated. I grew up with, so my dad is from Africa. My dad is was very skinny. And then my mom was always overweight. She's from the Czech Republic. So I grew up really thinking I need not to look like any of them. So when I started to train, all I wanted to do is get skinny, really, and I achieved that through running and a couple of push-ups, like I said. But then I didn't really like my looks, so I went into the gym and started to weight train. But I wasn't really aware of what muscle is, and I did not actually take a liking into muscle until a little bit later. So originally, I just wanted to be thin. Then I wanted a little bit of shoulders, and I wanted to have abs. And once I had it, I wanted more of it. So I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to say. I don't know if I came with some of it. One thing for sure is I've always had thick legs,
Mhm.
and that is definitely something very positive about my genetics because now I don't really have to I don't have to build it on anything. And I was never meant to be a bikini girl,
Mhm.
so obviously I came with shoulders, but I couldn't see this,
Yeah.
until probably my sixth year into my career.
And when you did really start to get into, the building muscle aspect, I mean, I know you mentioned that your legs were already very, very good, but is there a body part specifically other than your legs that really, really took off that you don't have to train as much? And then is there also a body part that really that you need to train a lot in order for it to grow?
Well, to be honest, yes and no at the same time. So I grew pretty proportionally everywhere. I've got good shoulders and everything. But I have to say that in the way figure competitions have gone, there is like the aesthetics have changed a little bit, right? So the need for larger legs in my category is no longer there. So I've had to actually change the way I train to adapt to what's needed on the Olympia stage. So I need to have smaller legs. And also the genetics of some of the girls is so incredible. And I wasn't born with a 20-inch waist. Mine is 24. I mean, it's small enough. So I have to actually build a bigger back and bigger shoulders. And that has proven to be more difficult than I thought.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm one of those people where luckily, I mean, I'm just blessed. I'm blessed with a big back. That's like the one thing that I have where I can train back, once a month and it still looks great. But I mean, like most other guys, my legs. I hate it. I hate working out legs all the time, but I have to do it in order to keep up. It's just one of those things that you have to do. But how long into your journey since you started working out, how long before you sort of realized, hey, bodybuilding or competing, this is something that I could really do? How long was that?
Oh, it took a solid 4 years. I competed at first just like to have fun. And then after that, I kind of liked it, but not really. And it's not until I met my partner, Mark, that things changed a little bit because he immediately saw the potential. Me, I was just like really happy if I placed top five in a regional show. And when he started to train me for a provincial show, he said, you could win the overall. And I said, I have no idea what that is. And he was like, well, and I did win the overall and I went to nationals and it took me a few years to get my pro card, but no, so it took me a long time.
What do you think was the biggest difference when he came in and started working with you? What do you think were the big changes that he made that really resulted in you going from, just hoping that you placed top five to winning overalls?
Well, he actually revealed to me that there was no such a thing as an off season.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So prior to meeting him, I would diet consistently and train for 6 months of the year and then eat my face off and rest for another 6 months. So when he came in and he said, what do you do during your off season? I said, nothing. And he was really shocked. And he explained to me, he said, you could really put a little bit of work into that off season and build the body that you want. So when you die, and I was like, whoa,
Just,
magic. And it
yeah.
happened.
Oh yeah, I mean that's one of the things too. When I was even getting started, like I said before, I mean I never competed, but just learning some of those things where you're like, oh, you can actually just like be on. There can really be like no off season if you really, really put your mind to it. And it's like, yeah, that's definitely one of those possibilities. But once you started training with him, I mean, like you said, you really, the dieting. I mean, it really went up a whole notch. But what was your first prep like with him? Because I always sort of like to make a comparison where I mean, just losing the weight and getting into shape, that can be hard enough in and of itself when it comes to the nutrition, the working out. But going on prep, that is notching it up to a whole different level where it's just so much more dedication, so much more. I mean, you got to work out all the time. Your nutrition's got to be on point. What was that experience like for you the first time?
Actually, it was really good. I think I felt like I was a little bit deprived when it comes to food. So within the first year, I probably had like a couple of binging episodes, but he handled it, I think, very well because I think I had like a 16 or 20 weeks prep,
Wow.
which I have to say that during the off season, I put on a lot of weight. So it was very gradual and very mindful. And I had, cheat meals up until probably 4 weeks before the show. So it went actually very, very well. It was like, and I wasn't actually overly working. I had already been once I met him and I started to train more consistently, I was in a better shape than I had ever been. So, losing the 20 pounds that led to the show, it was like a 1.5 pound a week. It really did not seem like a sacrifice. It went really well.
Oh yeah, especially I mean, like those long preps can be a lot better too because, like you said, if you're only losing like a pound and a half a week, that's better than some of these people that I have on that are losing like 3 or 4 pounds a week, and then they just really got to step it up a notch. So yeah, that is actually a great strategy. And I always like to say also, if you were to poll the general public, there would be like probably a single digit percentage of people that would be willing to go on stage and pose in front of people and basically a bikini. Was that a hard thing at first for you to sort of get the courage and build up to in order to do that? Because I mean, I know a lot of people would just be like, "Oh no, I just don't really, I don't really think I could do that." Or was that something for you where you were just like, you know what, I've worked my butt off and I'm just going to show off? What was that process like for you?
Well, actually, it was a little bit of both. Like the very first time that I stepped on stage, I just about died. I'll never forget. It was just, I didn't want to do it. I thought it was disgusting, and it was just. But I had worked so hard, like you said. I felt like I needed to do this. And anyway, I've never given up on anything before, so I just went through with it. And once I was on stage, I loved it so much that to this day, and we're talking like 40 shows later, it's still my favorite part of the preparation. It's actually stepping on stage.
Absolutely. I mean, I love to share moments. I mean, we have bands on, we have health and fitness people on, but just finding that thing in life that really brings you joy. Because a lot of these moments, like I talk to people and they say, it just makes them feel alive. And it's just like, you got to find that one thing in your life. And as long as, you
Yeah.
find that, it can be very, very, so positive for you too. And I also like to ask all my guests, whether they be bands, health and fitness guests, or anything else, what is that feeling like for you too, also, when you get to step on stage and, like I said, show off all that hard work where a lot of people that are just in the regular public, they just don't understand the hard work and determination that, your prep takes. What is that feeling like when you finally get to step on stage?
Um, like I said, it's really my favorite part. Like, I'm not really a big fan of the dieting. I'm not a fan of the working out. I'm not a fan of the prep week.
Mhm.
It is, I don't know, it's elating. It's and especially because, the body is only at that place for a day, if you're lucky, or 2 days, when, the salt and the water and everything is just perfect. It's just amazing, like I step on stage and I'm like, this is what I've worked my butt for. And it's just incredible. It feels amazing. And then I do it every single time just for those 2 minutes.
Oh yeah, and that's well, a lot of things. I mean, like my bands get lucky because they can perform, once a week for like an hour or two. But the competitors that I have on, I mean, it's like you're training just for, like you said, like 2 minutes for months upon months. So it really,
Yeah.
I mean, you got to have everything down, and that's just so much pressure. But I also like to ask, I mean, as you can tell, I'm a very pale individual myself. What was that like putting that tan on for the first time? Because we have so many guests that are just like, you see everything pop, you see muscles that you never even knew that you had. What is that process like putting the tan on for you?
It was a little bit embarrassing, and because it was some at least 10 years ago, it was definitely embarrassing. So first of all, I am a little bit light now, but I'm actually half black, so I come in a darker color. So it wasn't as traumatic on me as it was on others. But I was rolled by a friend of mine, and then I was like, oh, this is so weird. And then I step in front of, I think, a friend or something, and he's like, I think you're orange. And I said, oh. And then I was embarrassed, and then I covered myself from head to toe, and I didn't want to see anybody for a day. And at that time, I think we started actually the process of coloring 2 or 3 days out. So, like on the first color on Wednesday, and then Thursday, and then Friday, it's like I did not want to see anyone. I just sequestered myself until the show.
Yeah, there's so many things that go on with that putting that tan that a lot of people don't realize. I mean, one of the big things is that you can't really sit on anything, you can't really do anything. You basically because you're gonna just spread it, and then a lot of people. I mean, there's just so many things that I've heard on the show that has really just opened my eyes about what goes through with that. Because a lot of people just don't understand what that does to the competitors. Where I mean, you basically, like you said, you have to basically sequester yourself for a few days before the show, because anything that you touch or anything that you do, I mean, you're gonna leave marks. So yeah, I mean that just proves more to the dedication aspect. But now, what is your go-to post-show meal?
You know what? I used to be very much into a post-show meal, but now I really have no preferences. And I just want something that tastes good. And I'm going to tell you why, because I now have a refeed that is very high in carbohydrates.
Mhm.
And it just really turns me off. It's like, yeah, when you don't eat that much carbs for like 6 or 7 months, and all of a sudden, like there's, sugar being thrown down your throat. I don't know. It's like, the show is over and it's like, oh, what do you want to eat? I'm like, man, I'm okay with anything as long as it tastes good. I
Yeah.
have started to, stay away from, junk food for the purpose of just filling myself up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always got to ask too, when it comes to especially being a figure competitor, what was your experience like wearing those heels? Because a lot of people sometimes struggle with that, wearing those heels. Because especially, I mean, you're so dieted down, and it's hard enough to walk in heels without being dieted down and having that prep brain. But was that an easy transition for you, or was it something where you really had to work on that?
No, I want to say that I was born with heels. Like I come from a country where women just love them. Have been wearing heels since I remember. And it was like the easiest part of the journey. I mean, I needed to learn to sway my hips
Mhm.
in a different way, I have to say, but it came very, very naturally to me. And sometimes I do posing clinics here, and I am actually surprised to see some women not being able to step on a 4 inch heel. But I have to say that once you're used to it, it actually becomes like it's like second. It's really easy.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many times where we hear like some of our guests like they have to wear heels when they're like vacuuming or stuff like that, where just to get
Yeah,
used to that feel. But I did have my second guest on the show was actually the tallest ever bikini or figure competitor that's ever competed for women. She was 6'2", so she was about like 6'6", 6'7" in those heels. So yeah,
was a
she
heel.
she had a difficult time, but that's just just because you're so tall, and I'm 6'3" personally. So yeah, if you put me in those things, that's not gonna be a fun time whatsoever. But when it also comes to one of the things that I really love to talk about is the posing, because most people don't realize for a lot of the competitors, when it comes to either the weight training or the nutrition, the posing can be the hardest thing for a lot of people when it comes to that. Because I always like to say you can be a great driver, but you can never be a perfect driver. And that also applies to posing as well, where you can be a great poser, but it's something that you always have to be working on. What was that like for you learning the posing? Was that something that you easily picked up on? And how have you sort of maintained it? Because, like I said, it's something that you always have to work on.
That's right. Yeah. And then actually you have it completely right. So I started and I always thought I was a pretty good poser, but just because it comes naturally.
Mhm.
But then I realized that there was, through videos and then pictures and even my trainer's feedback, I realized that there were a few things I need to work on. But the longer I compete, the more I realize that I've been making mistakes for a long, long time. So I think that it's just a question of practicing, looking at your picture, looking at your videos, always checking out competition, of course, because there's so much to be learned from somebody else. But I do think that there's no one that is really perfection, but there's a lot of women that you can look at and be like, okay, this she did such a good job. And I think it has more to do with poise
Mhm.
and natural presence that I've always had, than the details. But the details are super relevant,
Mhm.
especially when you have flaws in your physique, which I do.
Oh, yeah, and I always say, like, you could be the most muscular or most well-defined person on the planet, and if you're not a good poser, that doesn't matter. Your muscles
That's
don't
right.
even matter. I mean, it's
I
it's
agree.
such an important thing, and it's all
Yeah.
about, getting the right angles and everything. I mean, especially since we have a lot of people who are very big on Instagram, where it's just like that, where for Instagram, you got to find the right angles for a lot of the pictures that you're doing, but also for posing, when it comes to shows, it's all about finding, and like you said, also having that just natural presence in there. I mean, some people do have that flair and that attitude where you're like, okay, they were born to do something like this, where it just comes natural for them. So yeah, that's definitely stuff that really factors in that a lot of people don't think of. I mean, there's so many little things that come into the sport that a lot of people just overlook, but they mean the world. But now,
Absolutely. But you
yeah,
know what? One thing for sure is I think that again, it's a question of just doing this enough that you pick up on things. Those are things that you get so much better at with time, right? And that's what makes, for example, a professional versus an amateur and a good professional versus a regular one. So it comes with time.
yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things too where just you get that muscle memory down and then it does become easier where you're not starting off at square one every single time. I mean, I
Correct.
completely agree. But what was that experience like getting your pro card? Because for a lot of people who, aren't really familiar with bodybuilding, your pro card, I mean, that's about the greatest thing that you can get just because it means that, you can start competing in all these pro shows and it really just certifies that all of the hard work that you're doing is really paid off. What was that feeling and experience like for you?
Well, because okay, so there are people, especially in Canada, that have been working for their pro cards for years and years, right?
Yep.
To like 20 years. And
Hmm.
so I only looked really, I was at national level maybe for 4 years before I got mine. So it's not like I've worked super hard
Yeah.
for it, but I thought it was the holy grail.
Mhm.
And once I had it, I was actually shocked with the level of emptiness that I felt once I got it,
Mhm.
because I had never, up until the time I got it, thought about what happened
Yep.
next. So then people were like, you're happy, you're elated, you are excited. I'm like, none of the above. I'm like, I'm just like, I don't know, like in a void. And it lasted at least a year
Mhm.
before I could really grasp what it meant. And then, frankly, once I realized what it meant, I realized that I was again at the bottom of the ladder, and I had been at the top for many years. And all of a sudden, I am one of the least, what would be the word, the least professionals of the professionals, right?
Mhm.
And then I got a little bit depressed, and I was like, oh, this is ridiculous. I've worked already, the previous 8 years. It's going to take another 8 to 10 years. And also, I'm not like super young, right? I'm 43. I'm like definitely one of the oldest professionals out there. So it took me a little while, but once I got it, I decided I was going to do a show. I did my first show. I placed ninth. It's kind of middle of the pack, right? And I was like, oh, maybe I can do this. The next show after that, I placed 16th. It was really a bummer, but that really got me. I don't know. It just really pepped me up. And then on my third show, I placed first, and I went to the Olympia.
That's awesome. And again, everyone, if you want to see one of the benefits of weightlifting, she doesn't look a day over 25. So get in the gym and get to working out. It really does make everything just seem better. But you sort of brought it up a little bit before, and I always love to talk about this because it is something that isn't really talked about as much. But when it comes to these shows, a lot of people don't realize is that when you are in that stage ready and you are that stage lean, a lot of people just don't realize that you've sort of manipulated your body through all of the dieting and the nutrition into a look that's not sustainable. Like you said, maybe a day you can look like that if you get it absolutely right. We've heard stories, about people, even hours after they start putting on weight. And it's something that will happen just because you've gotten to a leanness that really you can't sustain. Was that a hard adjustment for you, sort of realizing that, all this hard work that I put into it, I will have to gain weight after it, and it's something that just needs to happen? Was that a difficult adjustment for you? And what are some ways that you've sort of worked on to make it seem easier for you? Because we've had so many people that, get depressed or anxious from it. What are some ways that you've used to sort of turn it into a positive?
Well, you know what? I think I'm not really the right person to ask this, because I've always actually really liked my thicker body, I have to say. So as much as I love to see my abs and that stage ready pictures and state, by the way, at competition time, I never feel really good,
Mhm.
like physically.
Yep.
I don't feel strong. My numbers in the gym have gotten down.
Mhm.
My level of energy is a bit, like I drink way too much water for my liking. It feels like every single step that I take, I'm, like just dragging myself. So it's actually a relief when I
Yeah.
can finally, get some food in me and drink some water and then train heavier. And I've always been really happy. And I have to say that when I started my journey and I was overweight and I decided I wanted to be skinny, it took a certain amount of effort. And it's an effort that I remember every single time when I say to myself, oh, you should really be in contest shape right now. In my head, I go through the steps, the 20 weeks steps. And I'm like, you know what? I love the way I look now because this is the amount of work that I want to put in and nothing else.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just have so much respect for, the women that keep in, half decent shape or completely in shape. And I think it's remarkable. And then I think that it's just a matter of where you are in your life, how much you can give, how much you can receive, how much you have. It's like it depends on your environment, it depends on you. And yeah, like I said, I'm not the best person for that because I love my off-season body and I love my in-season body and I know how to go from one to the other pretty seamlessly.
Well, and that's great also to get that answer as well, because a lot of people just assume that everyone just really isn't able to adjust that well. But just to have people on here that are just like, hey, you know what? I accept it. And it's one of the things that I really, really enjoy because, to be honest, I would not like being that lean too for a while because, I mean, I like to eat. I like to eat carbs. I like to eat food. So it'd be one of those things where I'd be like, get me back on my carbs and let me enjoy some food. So that's definitely one of those things. But a lot of people also don't realize when they look at people who are in competition shape, like you said, you're not at your strongest by far because you're so lean down. But when you do train, a lot of people just assume that for these competitors that they must be, like some of the strongest people in the gym. But for a lot of the times, they train a lot for aesthetics where they don't do that much of heavy lifting. But when you train, do you do heavy lifts at all? Or is it more for you just the compound, multiple or a lot of reps exercises?
Actually, that's a really good question, but it has to do again with my body and where I want to take it. So, again, at the beginning of my journey 10 years ago, I lifted heavy in all aspects. Then I realized that my legs are too big. So, it's been probably about 4 years that I keep my legs in check by just doing a lot of repetitions, light weights. I actually have a really funny story about that. A couple of years ago, I was lunging for, I don't know, lunging 100 steps or whatever at the gym with a pair of 5 pounds when I heard, and I had my earphones, but I wasn't playing music, so I heard a pair of girls there, and they were like, "Oh my God, this is the way you get legs like hers." And in my head, I was like, I need to talk to them. I'm like, this
Yeah.
is not how you get legs.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, I thought that was pretty funny. So I don't do heavy lifting with my legs at all, and I don't squat anymore. And it's actually it makes me feel weird because a lot of competitors at my level, they work really, really hard for their legs, but we're just different people, right? It's like what works for them would never work for me. I mean, like the second I put on weight on my squat, my legs will be double in size. So it's not going to happen. When it comes to my back, I told you I need to get my back in bigger. So we're going heavy there, heavy on shoulders. My chest has always been okay. And for a figure competitor, it's not super relevant. So I barely even really touch my chest. I don't do very much arm work. I happen to grow my calves over 1 year by being very consistent. I have like black people's genetics, unfortunately, and we're not really gifted with a lot of calf muscle. And then over 1 year, I decided that I was going to grow my calf, and I started to work them maybe 3 times per week, and they grew. And ever since, I never had to work them again.
Well, believe me, I have also been blessed with small calves, and that's something that I hate. That I mean, I'm one of those people too, where just because I'm so tall as well, where I could train calves, every day, do 10,000 reps and they wouldn't gain one size. I mean, it really makes me angry when I see a lot of our guests on here that just have genetically just super big calves, and I'm like, oh God, that just it absolutely pains me. But one of the things that I did realize when you first came on is that, especially for a figure competitor, you have really big traps. That's one of the things that like
I
really
do.
really stands out. Do you ever work them at all, or is it one of those things where it's just genetic, where they're just like that?
I came with those.
Yeah. I was
You
gonna
have no idea.
I was gonna say, because if someone were just look at you now, they're like, oh, she's probably a physique competitor. Like, absolutely,
Exactly. No, no,
just with
no.
those, yeah,
Yeah. No, that
absolutely,
I mean, like, look at this. That back thickness is
yeah,
totally natural. I
yeah.
have not done a shrug in my life.
Lucky. I mean, everyone has that one body part where they're just lucky, blessed. That's one of those two where
That's
people
right.
always see it, so you're really, really defined. So yeah, that's awesome. And now, I mean, these next two questions are probably some of my favorite. When it comes to at least my journey, when it came to getting bigger and stronger, one of the things that I realized, especially when I was in college, the one negative thing for me was that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars. I mean, I'm still at home with my parents for the next few months, and every time they come home with groceries, I basically lift the car into the driveway with all the groceries in it and take them in. Have you found that just because the way that you look, I mean, I know you have a boyfriend or you have a partner that also, works out, but do you still find that because of the way that you look, people just assume that you can do favors for them?
You know what? Not at all. I'm surprised. But I have the feeling it has to do with the fact that I'm a woman, right? And it's like, I'm actually surprised. Yeah, anyway, I'm not surprised. But for example, my mom, when I go home and she needs to lift something heavy, she calls my brother over, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm always standing there. I'm like, but I don't even know what to say. And I feel like, no, it really hasn't happened. My friends, yeah, like they don't treat me any different. The one thing, however, that is very different is I feel like I've gained more respect
Mhm.
because of my looks, and I'm a little bit sad about that because I feel like you know smaller people or weaker people should not be victimized because they can't answer. But it is true that I just command a lot of respect now from everywhere, whereas before I feel like people were sometimes walking all over me.
Yeah. Well, and it adds a lot of confidence too, especially to the individual as well. So I mean,
Oh
that's one
yes,
thing that I found. And but for me, I mean, I'm just being 6'3". I mean, I could have no muscle at all, and people just look at me and they're like, "Oh yeah, this guy can do it." So I get asked. I mean, last summer it was like every other weekend, people would text me and be like, "Hey Ryan, I need help moving. I need you to get my chair, my couch." So it just got to the point where I just accepted it. That they are recognizing the hard work. So I really got it. But I'm just still surprised that your mom texts your brother, even though she has a figure pro right next to her, and doesn't say, "Oh hey, Martina, you want to lift this for me or whatever." But that's shocking in and of myself, in and of itself. But
it's old school.
yeah, yeah, I guess it is. But now, probably my favorite question to ask, and again, before I ask, it's a multi-million-dollar idea for anyone out there who's listening. When it comes to clothes for fit women and women with muscles, your clothing options can be limited. I always like to say, well, you especially, I mean, if you have big shoulders or big traps, dresses can be somewhat out of the picture. Jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time where it's very, very hard to find your right pair of jeans. What are some ways that you sort of compensate for the fact that your clothing options can be limited?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. And I'm like really bummed. When we went to the Olympia, we were going to the gala. I brought 7 dresses from the past, not one fit. So one of the ways I go about it, I always go backless because then my lats can just be free. I never wear anything that has shoulders, even like my sweatshirts and everything, they're like really large.
Mhm.
And when it comes to pants, I wear jeggings nonstop.
Yep. Yeah, that's one of those things where I mean, but it's like still, if anyone out there can invent like jeans or a dress for fit women or for fit guys too, guys have their own problems. But I mean, it's always that's a multi-million-dollar idea. I mean, I figured that out myself one time when I came home for a friend's wedding and I gained about 15, 20 pounds of muscle in that year, before. So when I was putting on my suit and tux, everything was a little tight. But then when I went to bend over at the service to get something, the shirt
Oh,
inside ripped, but luckily the suit didn't rip. So I mean, I could still see it, but it was one of those things where I was like, "Yep, I probably need to get new clothes," which is definitely one of the things that a lot of people just don't realize. There's like I said, there's so many little things, but also, I mean, I haven't mentioned this before, but she is Canadian. Everyone, she's about our when it comes to counting our bands too, she's probably a sixth or seventh Canadian that we've had in the podcast, and we love talking to our neighbors from the north. But and you're also in the Vancouver area, is that right?
that's correct. Yeah,
So what is that like? Because I mean, when a lot of people talk about Canada, they just assume that it's just basically just a snowy, cold, just a very cold place. But Vancouver, I mean, you're right close to Seattle, where I mean, you don't get the extreme weather as a lot of people do in like Manitoba or
that's
Windsor
correct.
and some other places. What are some ways that you sort of like to get out and train during? Do you like to go out at all and do workouts? Not in the gym, or are you someone that likes to do all of their workouts inside?
You know what? I don't really like the outdoors. I was raised in Africa, I have to
Oh yeah,
say, and it's like it was really hot outside, so we
yeah,
always were inside, I have to say, when we were there. So then I get here and I realize everyone's always like outside doing things, and it's like it's taken me literally the past 20 years to get used to going for a walk without a purpose, right? I
yeah,
come here and people are like, "Oh, let's go for a hike." I'm like, "Why?" They're like, "Well, to hike, to be in nature." I said, "I have no clue what you're talking about." I'm like, if I'm gonna go somewhere, it's because if I'm gonna walk, I have to go somewhere.
yeah.
So actually, I am an indoor person, and
Oh
I
yeah.
prefer to train indoors. When I fly to California to see my
Hmm.
trainer, I train at Gold's there, and I have to say that it's really pleasant to be
Yep.
outside. But Vancouver is extremely rainy and very
Hmm.
unpredictable when it comes to weather. And I own my own gym here.
Okay.
It's called Train on Main, and like one of my biggest wishes would have been to have barbells outside, but we
Oh
can't do
yeah.
it in this weather.
Yeah, that's awesome because like I say, a lot of people just don't realize I live in a climate too that's very, very nice. I mean, except now during the winter because it can get I mean, we're probably the coldest spot in the United States. I mean, can some places in Canada, up very up north get a little bit colder than we do here, but I mean, we'll have temperatures where it gets like -30 sometimes where it's just you really just want to stay inside all day and luckily I have a gym inside so I can get that workout in. But then during the summer it's perfect weather, to go on bike rides or go on hikes. But what was also that experience like coming like you said from Africa where it can be super super hot to coming to a different climate. Was that a hard adjustment for you to sort of get used to?
You know what? It was at first, but I didn't really quite move straight
Hmm.
from. I moved from Cameroon to Los Angeles, and from
Oh yeah.
Los Angeles to here.
Oh
So
yeah.
it was a little bit more, and it took a while. So I
Hmm.
remember being cold the first 10 years
Yeah.
that I lived in Canada, and now I'm always hot.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think it's adaptation. It happens, right? And no, it's not a big deal. I have to say that we're in the warmest part of Canada
Yeah.
anyway. So I mean, like outside it's like -2 now. It's like, and it's as cold as probably will get.
Yeah, and for that, everyone, that's also Celsius, not Fahrenheit. For anyone
Oh yeah,
trying to do the math, because like when they're in negative two, they're like, "Holy crap, that's cold out there." But yeah,
no.
it's Celsius. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it is probably the warmest part of Canada. But now we like to go to my favorite part of the podcast and the audience favorite part of the podcast, a little questionnaire where I'm going to ask Martina here about a dozen or so questions and see how she stacks up to all the other health and fit guests that we've had on the show. So for our first question, what is your go-to workout song at the moment?
Oh, I don't do songs, I do mixes.
Ooh,
And then one of my favorite DJs is called Crafty Cats.
Crafty
So I would
Cats.
listen to anything that he does.
That's awesome. I mean, me personally, I'm an old school where it's like 80s music, like that really pop or that really, that really cheesy stuff where I mean like the Rocky 4 soundtrack is probably my go-to soundtrack that I have just because it's so cheesy but so good. But then I also have like Metallica and Iron Maiden, some of those heavy metal bands. But I have a problem when I'm like at the gym, either I mean I work out like I said 75% of the time at my house, but then the times that I go to a regular gym, I sometimes have to wait for the song for the beat to drop. So like I'll be doing like let's say lat pull downs, and I'll be sitting there for like 30 seconds, and then people come up to me like
Wait.
it'd be like, "Are you all right? Like what's going on? Like did you hurt your back or whatever?" I was like, "Nope, just waiting for the beat to drop." Or if there's like or if I know that I'm gonna have to do like a set of something that lasts like 5 or 6 minutes, I need to get like a 5 or 6 minute long song just so that I don't have to like worry about switching it. I'm one of those anal retentive people where I have to have that thing. So that's one thing that I do have to work on. But yeah, mixes are very good too. I mean, sometimes I put that on SoundCloud. But now, out of all the celebrities on the planet, if you could work out with any celebrity, who would it be?
Oh, that's a superb question. Hmm.
That's the first time we've heard the word superb on this podcast, and I cannot thank you enough.
You know what? I'm not really sure anyone. Like I'm not impressed. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't like to work out.
Yep. We finally have
So
someone on here that admits it, okay? All these people have talked about how they love to do it, and I'm like, there's got to be at least someone in here that's like, I don't like to do it, but I like the way it makes me feel and the way it makes me
yes,
look. Yeah.
yes, I have to be honest. But you know what? I have to say that the top three at the Olympia this year is Sydney Gillen, Candice Lewis, if and Nadia Watt. If I could just sit with them and have a coffee and poke their brains, that would be my favorite workout
Yeah.
with my favorite people.
Well, I think thank you for saying someone else because we always hear Dwayne the Rock Johnson is by far like 90% of the time he's the answer. So yeah, we finally got someone else. So I mean, you did mention, that you love to make women strong. That I mean, so it might not be just a celebrity that you like to do, but what are some key differences when it comes to increasing and making women stronger as opposed to making men stronger? Because the bodies are built differently. They have different levels of, like men have all the testosterone so they can build muscle easier. But what are some techniques that you use specifically for women to help them build muscle and get stronger?
You know what? To be honest with you, like we train men and women the same way in my facility,
Oh.
but I think that the portion of that I want to train women with is more mental.
Hmm.
That they belong, that they have their place in the gym,
Hmm.
that building muscle is not something that is reserved to men. That looking at a female that has a lot of muscle should not make them feel like ew
Hmm.
or weird, or that it is acceptable, that being strong is necessary.
Hmm.
And so when we're training them, I think that the most important part that we're training really is their brains.
Yep, absolutely. And that brings me up to, the number one stereotype that I love to bust. I mean, it's gotten better with Instagram the last 5 years, but there are a lot of women that still believe if they touch one weight, they're just going to hulk out and gain 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And I always say, sign me up if that's the case. I will pay that person to train me. But I know you said before you really just wanted to, get slimmer and you didn't really focus on the building muscle aspect. But was that something that you really were kind of afraid of in the beginning? Like you don't want to get really, really huge. And then even if that wasn't for you, I mean, I know being a trainer, you probably hear this, at least 100 times. What is your main response to that?
You know what? I was actually really ignorant when I started. So I didn't really associate having muscle to being stronger. And I never even realized that I could have some because and then, even here, even though we were quite evolved when it comes to fitness at the time, there weren't a lot of women that were well built. So it was actually never an option for me. So all I wanted is just to lose weight. I didn't realize that it had something to do with fat or muscle. I was totally ignorant. So I find that all the women that come to my facility look at me and say, you know what? I do not want to build muscle to the extent that you have.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a question of ignorance. So I no longer take it personal. And I always I go with the flow. I explain to them, I'm like, listen, this is what we're going to do. You need a little bit more muscle so you can burn more fat. There's only two type of tissues, it's between fat and then muscle. So when you tell me that you want less tissue, you're going to have less muscle and less fat. With less muscle comes less strength. Don't you want to be strong? Don't
Yep.
you want to open your own door? Don't you want to lift your own child? And and then it just takes a little time and practice. So all I do is I hook them up to coming to the gym and to an exercise program, and then we build them from there. And you'd be surprised in my facility, most women can deadlift 200 pounds like it's
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I always got to say, does she look like Dwayne The Rock Johnson or Hulk Hogan? She's been working out for how many years and she looks that great? I mean, it's like, it's such a myth that I always love to bust when we have our guests on. It's like, yeah, just take one look at them and you can say, and they've been working out for that long. It takes so much in order to get even to that level. So that's just, I love busting that. I mean, I always like to tell the story when I was in college, I had a really good friend and she would always say, like, Ryan, I know you've been working out a lot and getting stronger. I want to come to the gym with you. I mean, she would go and she'd run all the time, but then she was like, I really want to, maybe try some weights, but I'm afraid of getting too bulky. And then finally one night I said, look, the amount of weight that you carry in your purse when we go out to clubs or go out to eat weighs more than a lot of the dumbbells in the gym, and you're not gaining muscle from carrying that thing around all the time. And that finally convinced her, where she went in. It's like, you just try it and then see what it feels like. Because I mean, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to get healthier if you lift a weight. So yeah, I always
It's
say
very
that. I
positive.
always say that too. And then my number one thing when people tell me, I'm not a trainer or anything, but I always say, it's like, do you want to be able to eat more food that you like and be able to burn it off? I mean,
Right.
that's the number that should be every trainer's go-to, is where you're just like, you want to be able to eat more and eat good and eat the food that you want and still be able to, put off some pounds. So that's, yeah, I mean, number
Yeah.
one. But now
But
going,
it's interesting. I just want to tell you another
yeah.
story that's actually very similar. But I remember also a trainer at a different gym than mine. She was asking me, she's like, "Oh, I need to stop putting on muscle." And I said, "Well, what makes you think that you're putting on so much muscle?" And so she asked me about, how much I have put on. And I said, over the past 10 years, I think I put on 10 pounds
Yep.
of muscle. She's like, "Oh, no, I can put on a lot of weight." Anyway, it's long story short, she trained for a competition and she had to move from figure to bikini because what she thought was muscle was actually fat weight, right?
Mhm.
So I think it's like really educating women on what's the difference and how much space it takes and what it looks like and how much better it makes you feel and how much food you can eat. It's what we have to do. We are educators.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And now going back to our questionnaire, what is one thing that you always need to have in your fridge?
Oh, meat.
Yep.
Yeah,
What
I'm like a meat eater. Like protein has never been a problem.
what is your favorite type of meat?
A beef.
Beef. Yep. Where do you get it? Do you like to get it organically, or do you just go to just a store? How do you get it?
No, I mean we have this. There's a cut of meat at Costco that is incredibly
Oh yeah.
tasting, but we prefer in this household to have only wild meats and
Mhm.
or organics.
Yep.
So for sure, so we go to the butchery.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So now, what is one thing that people who follow you on Instagram would be surprised to know about you if they met you in person?
I don't know, possibly my age. I would say.
I would say that's shocking too, because when she told us, I was like, you got to be kidding me. That's unbelievable. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I definitely put that down too. But now, what is one thing that you would change about the sport of bodybuilding if you had the all-knowing power to do so?
Uh, hmm. Actually, there's quite a few things. Well, one of the things, for example, is the misconception that women have to do drugs to get to a professional level. That would be the one thing.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, that's
I
that's a
think
that's a good shame.
yeah, it's like it's a path of least resistance. I think people don't want to work. They don't want to work hard. They don't realize that you have to put on a lot of hours of in the gym. You have to eat very well. You have to do it for a long time,
Mhm.
so you can see results. Right? It's like it's not going to happen tomorrow.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely one of the big ones, the answers that we get 100%. But now, what was the last TV show that you binge watched?
Oh, Lucifer.
Lucifer? Oh wow. Yeah, that is the second time that we've heard Lucifer. So Lucifer's on the board again. That's a good one. Yeah, that was a good show. I watched a few episodes of it when it was on the air, and yeah, that was really really good. But now, what is your favorite TV show of all time?
Of all time, probably The Bridge.
The Bridge.
Yeah,
Oh
as
wow.
disgusting as it sounds.
Yeah.
I mean,
What?
when you watch it, you'll understand what I mean. It's from Northern Europe.
Oh
It's dark.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've never heard about that, so I'll definitely have to look it up and see what it's all about. But now, what is a guilty pleasure movie that you enjoy?
I no longer watch movies. I really
Oh
literally watch series
yep.
because I do cardio and
Yep.
then I allow myself to watch
Mhm,
Netflix. And anyway, so I'm like a series
mhm.
person, I have to say.
Okay. Yeah. So now I gotta ask also, what is your favorite fashion trend of all time and least favorite fashion trend of all time?
My favorite, hmm, pants on women. Yeah, I think I really like pants on women.
That's nice, yeah. What is your
Just
least
like
favorite?
Where's my least favorite? Shorts at the restaurant.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's a big one too. Yep. Yeah, that's one of those things too where I sometimes look at that where I'm just like, okay, you're in a restaurant. What are you doing? What are you doing? One hundred
I
percent.
thought I was the only one to think
Well,
that
no,
way.
sometimes yeah. I mean, for the classy restaurants, yeah, but then some restaurants you're like, okay, that's fine. But yeah, for certain restaurants, when you see people that like just don't, it's like, yeah, you might. Yeah, I mean, it's like you don't have to dress up, but you don't have to look a little presentable. 100%. I
That's
mean,
right.
for me, flannel is a huge thing that I love, just because living in such a cold climate, it's very comfortable. But I'm sorry, fanny packs are my least favorite, especially well, girls can pull it off, but guys, I know it's making a little bit of a comeback. My dad used to wear one in like the late '90s, so I'm still scarred by that. Where I'm just like, no, fanny packs.
No.
It's like guys, it's like, guys, come on, have a little respect for yourself. It's that's probably my big thing. But now, if you could go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give her?
Oh my gosh. Probably to just be myself.
Hmm.
Like it took me a long time, like my background is so diverse.
Hmm.
It took me a really long time to find myself. I don't think that I was the person that I am until I was probably 32.
Hmm.
And in between I've been a lot of people that I wasn't, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But it was really hard because when I grew up in Africa being light
Hmm.
skinned, I was always deemed to be white and different. Then I moved to the States and then all of a sudden I'm black.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I'm in between and I'm not actually really, even though I'm either black or white, I never really belong in
Yeah.
any of the two camps. And
Yep.
there's no such a thing, at least up until now, there was no such a thing as a mixed camp.
Hmm.
So yeah, that I would say, just be happy with who you
Yep.
are.
Well, I was gonna say, and plus moving to Canada, which is one of the whitest countries on the planet, too. That's got to be a difficulty too in and of itself, because
Oh,
yeah,
you
that's
have no idea.
yeah.
You
I
have
mean, yeah. I'm in Minnesota, and Minnesota is probably one of the whitest states in the United States. So I definitely get, like, whenever we do have people up here of different colors, they're just like, wow, there's just so many white. I mean, even for the United States, I mean, it's very so. Yeah, just being in that, just completely different. And like you said, yeah, like if you're mixed, you don't really seem to belong to either one. So you kind of just seem like you have to make your own thing. So yeah, I just can't imagine
That's right.
what that is like personally. But 100%, yeah, just be yourself. I mean, for me, I was a huge people pleaser back then, so just realize
Yeah,
you're not going to please everyone, and just like you
that's
said,
right.
just be yourself. But now,
Yeah.
if we were to talk to you again in a year, what would your goal be, or where would you like to be at a year from today?
You know what? I thrive to be happy, honestly. That's always been what I wanted to do. It's like I don't really have long-term goals or short-term goals. I don't care to be, to win the Olympia. I just want to be happy. I want a good relationship. I want my business to thrive. I want my friends to be healthy. I want my family to be around. I
Yeah.
just want to be happy. I'm so happy doing what I'm doing
Yeah.
now. I just want to be in the same place next year.
Absolutely. And like you said, I mean, you got done with the show a little bit earlier, this a few weeks ago. But do you have any current plans as when you're going to compete next, or are you just like in the phase now where you're just like, I just want to put on some weight, I just want to bulk up a little bit, and then see where that goes?
Oh no, no, I haven't been bulking up for a really long time. That weight has come down. No, you know what? Actually, I applied for the Arnold's like 2,000 other competitors as per usual every year, and we're not getting the answer until about Christmas time.
Oh,
So everyone is kind of a little bit on the edge when it comes to dieting and bulking up, like you were saying, because if you get called in, the show is March 2nd, which is
oh
only
yeah.
8, maybe 9 weeks from the time they announce
Mhm.
it. So all of us are actually already just training for that.
Well, that would be a good Christmas present then for you if you get the confirmation back to you. But
It would
yeah,
be.
that is really weird though how they give you such short notice, because it's like then these people have 3 months to train, and some people might have already let themselves go a little bit. Where it's just like,
Yeah,
yeah, you
yeah.
definitely got to let them know maybe a little bit more head time. And again, we wish you nothing but the best. Everyone, go follow
Thank
Martina on
you.
Instagram. She's a great inspiration. I mean, just taking one look at her, you want to get off the couch and start doing some exercises. Stop eating those Twinkies so much. I mean, and you are a great guest. Everyone, like I said, go
Thank you,
follow her.
sir.
Go follow her, absolutely. And is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Well, listen, I already did, but I wanted to thank my trainer for bringing me to where I am, which is Eric DeLoro, and my partner for supporting me
Mhm.
this long.
Yeah.
And his name is Marc Santarno. And actually, my facility has been amazing. All my clients and family. It's called Train on Main in Vancouver. And my studio is beautiful, and people around me are just so supportive. I mean, like, I wouldn't be where I was if it wasn't for these three entities.
And if anyone there's in the Vancouver area, I definitely recommend to go and check out her studio and see what it's all about. Get a workout in. You never know. You may fall in love with it. So everyone go and check that out. And again, we cannot
Thank
thank
you.
her enough for coming on the show. Links to all of her stuff down below. Highly recommend it. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Ryan.